My name's Liam, and up until recently, I thought my life was fine. Not perfect, not extraordinary, but fine. My wife Chloe and I had been married for 7 years. 7 years of shared routines, lazy Sundays on the couch, and arguments about whose turn it was to unload the dishwasher. We weren't passionate like we used to be, but who was after that long? I thought it was normal. Chloe was the kind of woman who turned heads, not because she was loud or overly dramatic, but because she had this magnetic energy. Her laugh, her wit, her ability to own any room. People loved her, especially her friends. One of those friends was Emily. We'd known each other since college. She was one of those loyal but blunt types, always quick with a joke but never afraid to call someone out. Chloe's inner circle always included her, so by default, she became part of my circle too. Last Friday, we hosted a small gathering at our house. Chloe loved playing hostess, putting out all the charcuterie boards and opening bottles of wine like we were entertaining royalty. By 11:30, most people had left, but Emily, a couple of Chloe's other friends, and I stayed back, chatting and sipping the last of the wine. That's when it happened. Emily was tipsy, maybe more than tipsy. She leaned close to me when Chloe went to grab another bottle from the kitchen and said, "You ever wonder if Chloe's hiding something from you?" I blinked at her, confused. "What are you talking about?" She laughed it off. "Nothing. Nothing. Forget I said anything?" Chloe came back into the room, laughing and full of energy, oblivious to the tension Emily's words had planted in my head. I didn't know what to think. Was it a joke? A drunken jab? Or was there something behind it? I watched Chloe that night like I was seeing her for the first time. The way she laughed just a little too hard at some guy's joke. The way she lingered in conversations that didn't include me. I told myself I was being paranoid. Chloe was friendly and outgoing. It was part of what made me fall for her. But I couldn't shake Emily's words. Would I know if Chloe was hiding something from me? The next day, life went on as usual. Chloe kissed me goodbye before heading to yoga, leaving me with a peck on the cheek and a waft of her perfume. She acted normal, completely normal. But I wasn't normal. My brain wouldn't stop replaying Emily's drunken words. I started paying more attention to Chloe. The little things she did or didn't do. The way her phone was always face down on the table. How she laughed more at her messages than at anything I said. How sometimes she was just somewhere else. Was it all in my head? Or was there something more? Saturday night rolled around uneventfully. Chloe was in her usual spot on the couch, scrolling through her phone, a glass of wine balanced precariously on the armrest. She'd been doing this more lately, distracted, head buried in her screen, laughing at something that clearly wasn't me. I sat across from her, flipping channels on the TV, pretending I wasn't hyper-aware of every little movement she made. I couldn't let it go. Emily's words echoed in my mind like a challenge. You ever wonder if Chloe's hiding something from you? After a while, Chloe got up, said she was heading to bed early, and left her phone on the kitchen counter to charge. That never happened. She usually took it with her everywhere. She'd even joked about being tethered to it. I stayed downstairs, pretending to watch TV, but my eyes kept flicking to her phone, sitting there like Pandora's box. Was I about to cross a line? Probably. Did I care? Not even a little. I grabbed her phone and turned it on. Locked. Of course. But then something clicked. I knew her passcode. It wasn't hard to guess. It was her birth date. She was annoyingly predictable like that. My fingers hovered over the screen for a second before I punched it in. Unlocked. For a moment, I just stared at it. This wasn't me. I wasn't the guy who snooped through his wife's stuff. But this wasn't a normal situation either. I opened her messages, scrolling past the usual mundane chats. Nothing stood out until I saw Emily's name. Their last conversation wasn't recent, but it wasn't old either. I tapped on it, my stomach tightening with every word I read. Emily, Liam is your husband, Chloe. You can't just brush him aside like this. Chloe, you don't understand him. Otis gets me in ways Liam never could. Emily, so what? You're just going to keep lying to him forever? Chloe, it's not that simple. Emily, it is that simple. Liam deserves better. Chloe, I don't know how to tell him, but I can't let Otis go. I stared at the screen, my brain working overtime to make sense of what I just read. Otis. A name that meant nothing to me, and yet everything at the same time. Who the hell was Otis? I didn't have to wonder for long. A second later, I found the messages between her and someone saved in her contacts as, "Oh." My hand shook as I opened the thread. It was worse than I could have imagined. There were photos, candid, flirty selfies Chloe had taken. Nothing too risque, but the context made it unbearable. And then there were messages. "Otis, can't stop thinking about last night. You're incredible." Chloe, same. "Wish I could be there now." Otis, soon. Just us. No interruptions. Chloe, "I can't wait." I stopped reading after that. My vision blurred. My chest heaved, and I slammed her phone down on the counter. I needed air. I stumbled out onto the porch, the cool night air hitting me like a slap in the face. My mind was a storm. Confusion, rage, humiliation all crashing together. I had trusted her. I had never doubted her once. And now, this? Who the hell even was Otis? After a few minutes, I went back inside, calmer but still seething. I picked up her phone and snapped photos of everything. The messages, the pictures, even the timestamps. I wasn't going to confront her yet, but I wasn't going to let this slide either. When I put her phone back on the counter, it looked exactly as it had before. No one would have known I touched it. I climbed the stairs slowly, my legs heavy. She was already asleep when I got to our room, curled up on her side, her breathing steady and peaceful. For the first time in 7 years, I didn't see my wife when I looked at her. I saw a liar, a cheat, a stranger, and I had no idea what to do next. The next morning, Chloe was her usual self. Cheerful, chatty, sipping her coffee like the world hadn't just imploded for me. I sat across from her at the breakfast table, nodding at the right moments, playing my part. But inside, I was a grenade with the pin halfway out. "You okay?" she asked, her eyes flicking up from her phone. I nodded, forcing a smile. "Yeah. Why?" She shrugged. "You just seem quiet." Quiet. That was her word for it. If only she knew the war raging inside me. The day dragged. Chloe left for brunch with some friends, leaving me alone in the house with my thoughts. I tried to distract myself, cleaning, watching TV, anything to keep my mind from circling back to her messages. But it was impossible. Every time I thought about those photos, those messages, that name, Otis, I felt like punching a hole through the wall. By the time Chloe got home, I'd made a decision. I wasn't going to confront her yet. Not until I had a plan. This wasn't just about the betrayal. It was about the lies, the manipulation, and the way she thought she could play me for a fool. When she walked through the door, she gave me a breezy smile, holding up a bag. "I brought you a sandwich. Figured you'd be hungry." She was so casual, so normal. It made my skin crawl. "Thanks," I said, my voice tight. She kissed my cheek before heading to the living room, plopping onto the couch with her phone, always with the damn phone. I watched her from the doorway, my fists clenched at my sides. How many messages would she send to Otis today? How many excuses would she make to see him next? I had to get out of the house before I lost it. Grabbing my keys, I mumbled something about running errands and left before she could ask questions. I drove aimlessly for a while, letting the quiet hum of the engine soothe my frayed nerves. Eventually, I parked at a coffee shop, ordering a drink I didn't even want. I sat in the corner, staring at my phone, trying to figure out my next move. That's when an idea hit me. The next morning, I put my plan into motion. "Hey," I said over breakfast, keeping my tone light. "What are your plans today?" "Not much," Chloe said, flipping through her phone like she always did. "I might run some errands." "Why?" "Just wondering," I said with a smile. I was thinking of inviting Emily over for coffee. I haven't really caught up with her in a while. Chloe froze, her spoon halfway to her mouth. "Emily?" "Yeah," I said, watching her closely. "Why not? She's a good friend, right?" Sure," Chloe said, her tone guarded. "If you want." "I'll text her," I said, already pulling out my phone. Chloe didn't say anything else, but I saw the flicker of unease in her eyes. Good. She should feel uneasy. Emily showed up that afternoon, looking curious but also a little wary. Chloe sat stiffly on the couch, sipping her tea, while I poured Emily a cup of coffee. "Thanks for coming," I said, handing Emily her mug and sitting across from her. "I've been meaning to thank you." Emily tilted her head. "For what?" "For what you said at the party the other night," I said, keeping my tone casual. "It gave me a lot to think about." Chloe stiffened, her eyes darting between us. "What's this about?" she asked, her voice tight. I turned to her, my smile gone. "You don't know?" Her face flushed. "No, I don't." I reached into my pocket, pulling out my phone. "Then maybe this will jog your memory." I opened the gallery and handed it to Emily. Her eyes widened as she scrolled through the screenshots. "Oh my God," she muttered, looking up at Chloe. "You didn't." Chloe's face turned a shade of red I'd never seen before. "Liam, I can explain." "Explain what?" I snapped, cutting her off. "That you've been sneaking around with Otis? That you've been lying to me every single day while planning your next little rendezvous? Go ahead, Chloe. Explain that." Emily set the phone down, looking shell-shocked. "I told you this would happen, Chloe. I told you." Chloe's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. "It's not what it looks like." "It's exactly what it looks like," I said, my voice icy. "And now everyone knows it." The next morning, I put my plan into motion. "Hey," I said over breakfast, keeping my tone light. "What are your plans today?" "Not much," Chloe said, flipping through her phone like she always did. "I might run some errands." "Why?" "Just wondering," I said with a smile. "I was thinking of inviting Emily over for coffee. I haven't really caught up with her in a while." Chloe froze, her spoon halfway to her mouth. "Emily?" "Yeah," I said, watching her closely. "Why not? She's a good friend, right?" Sure," Chloe said, her tone guarded. "If you want." "I'll text her," I said, already pulling out my phone. Chloe didn't say anything else, but I saw the flicker of unease in her eyes. Good. She should feel uneasy. Emily showed up that afternoon, looking curious but also a little wary. Chloe sat stiffly on the couch, sipping her tea, while I poured Emily a cup of coffee. "Thanks for coming," I said, handing Emily her mug and sitting across from her. "I've been meaning to thank you." Emily tilted her head. "For what?" "For what you said at the party the other night," I said, keeping my tone casual. "It gave me a lot to think about." Chloe stiffened, her eyes darting between us. "What's this about?" she asked, her voice tight. I turned to her, my smile gone. "You don't know?" Her face flushed. "No, I don't." I reached into my pocket, pulling out my phone. "Then maybe this will jog your memory." I opened the gallery and handed it to Emily. Her eyes widened as she scrolled through the screenshots. "Oh my God," she muttered, looking up at Chloe. "You didn't." Chloe's face turned a shade of red I'd never seen before. "Liam, I can explain." "Explain what?" I snapped, cutting her off. "That you've been sneaking around with Otis? That you've been lying to me every single day while planning your next little rendezvous? Go ahead, Chloe. Explain that." Emily set the phone down, looking shell-shocked. "I told you this would happen, Chloe. I told you." Chloe's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. "It's not what it looks like." "It's exactly what it looks like," I said, my voice icy. "And now everyone knows it." Filing for divorce was strangely anticlimactic. After spending days preparing for the moment, I expected something more. A confrontation with lawyers, maybe, or at least some kind of emotional weight. But no, it was just paperwork, handed across a counter to a clerk who didn't even look at me twice. The woman behind the desk skimmed the documents, stamped them, and handed me a receipt. "You'll get an update in 2 to 3 weeks," she said briskly. And that was it. 7 years of marriage reduced to a file in a courthouse. I walked out of the building into the cool morning air, feeling empty, but not defeated. The weeks following Chloe's departure were a strange mix of freedom and emptiness. For years, my life had been tied to hers, every routine shaped around our marriage. Now, I was waking up in a quiet house with no one to argue with over who got the last cup of coffee or whose turn it was to take out the trash. At first, the silence was suffocating. I filled it with noise, music, podcasts, the TV droning in the background. Anything to drown out the thoughts that crept in when the house was too still. But then, slowly, the quiet started to feel peaceful. One of the first things I did was rearrange the house. It felt too much like her, like every corner held a memory I wasn't ready to confront. I moved furniture, got rid of the throw pillows she loved but I hated, and swapped out the photos on the walls for ones of my family and friends. It wasn't just about changing the physical space, it was about reclaiming it as mine. I also started going to the gym more, not out of some cliche revenge body motivation, but because it gave me something to focus on. The physical exertion, the routine of it. It grounded me in a way I hadn't expected. And then there was work. I threw myself into it, taking on extra projects and staying late at the office. It wasn't healthy, but it kept me busy. My coworkers noticed the change, but no one said anything until my manager, Tom, pulled me aside one day. "You've been killing it lately," he said, his tone cautiously optimistic. "But are you okay? You seem different." I hesitated before answering. "Just going through some personal stuff. Keeping busy helps." He nodded, not pressing further, but the concern in his eyes was clear. As the months went by, I started noticing small changes in myself. I smiled more, laughed more. I reconnected with old friends, people I'd lost touch with during my marriage to Chloe. One Friday night, I met up with a group of them at a local bar. It was the first time I'd been out socially since everything went down, and I felt a pang of nervousness walking in. But the moment I saw their faces light up, the tension melted away. "Liam," my friend Tyler called, pulling me into a bear hug. "It's about damn time." The night was a blur of laughter, shared stories, and too many beers. For the first time in months, I felt like myself again. Not Liam, the betrayed husband, but Liam, the guy people actually enjoyed being around. One day, while cleaning out the closet, I stumbled across a box of old photos. It was a mix of things: vacation pictures, holiday snapshots, candid moments from the early days of my marriage to Chloe. I sat on the floor, sifting through them, my emotions tugged in a dozen directions. There were good memories there, moments of real happiness that felt like they belonged to another lifetime. I found one photo of us from our honeymoon, Chloe laughing as I tried to fit our luggage into a tiny car. I stared at it for a long time before slipping it back into the box. The memories didn't hurt as much as I expected. They felt distant, like a story someone else had told me. By the time the divorce was finalized, I was ready to move on. Chloe tried to negotiate for more in the settlement, but the evidence I'd gathered left her with little leverage. She walked away with her personal belongings and not much else. I sold the house shortly after, using the money to buy a smaller place on the edge of town. It was modest but comfortable, surrounded by trees and quiet. When I moved in, Harper sent me a message. "Harper, congrats on the new place. Here's to fresh starts." Smiley face. I smiled as I replied. "Me, thanks. We both deserve them." Moving into my new house was like shedding old skin. It wasn't just about leaving behind the physical space that Chloe and I had shared. It was about stepping into a version of myself that no longer had to carry the weight of her betrayal. The house was small but cozy, tucked at the end of a quiet street lined with tall oaks. I'd picked it for the peace it offered. No neighbors close enough to overhear my thoughts, no constant reminders of the chaos that had unraveled my life. The first night I spent there, the quiet felt suffocating again. The weight of everything hit me as I stood in the living room, boxes still stacked around me. But then I cracked open a bottle of bourbon, sat on the floor, and let myself feel it all: the anger, the sadness, the relief. I fell asleep there, the bottle half empty beside me, but I woke up lighter. With the house coming together, I started focusing on myself in other ways. I signed up for a cooking class, a whim inspired by years of letting Chloe do all the meal planning. The first class was awkward. I walked in late, fumbling with my apron, surrounded by couples who were clearly there for date night. "Cooking solo?" the instructor, a woman named Veronica, asked with a smile. "Yep," I said, forcing a grin. "Just me and my terrible knife skills." By the end of the night, I'd successfully not burned anything, and Veronica had invited me back for a second class. It felt good to try something new, something just for me. One evening, Emily called out of the blue. Just wanted to check in, she said. How's life as a bachelor? Surprisingly decent, I said. I'm not crying into my beer every night, so that's a win. She laughed. Good to hear. And Chloe? I hesitated, then shrugged, even though she couldn't see me. Don't know. Don't care. She's not my problem anymore. Emily was quiet for a moment. You sound different. In a good way. I feel different, I admitted. For the first time in a long time, I actually like who I am. The following year was one of growth. I traveled more, made new friends, and even started dating again. I wasn't in a rush to find love, but I was open to it. More importantly, I was open to life. One sunny morning, as I sat on my porch with a cup of coffee, I realized I was genuinely happy. Not the fleeting kind of happiness that comes from external things, but the deep, quiet contentment of knowing you've survived the storm and come out stronger. Chloe and Otis? They were just chapters in my story, ones I'd closed for good. And now, I was writing a new one. Subscribe so you don't miss new stories on the channel.